Am I back? I'm back. Okay. Mute self.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Hello and welcome to our program. I'm Stephanie Gaspar on the board of Kissimmee Valley Audubon Society and appreciate everyone watching. Last month, we had to postpone our first general meeting of the season due to the hurricane, and we all hope that everyone is safe and recovering. I have important chapter announcements to share with everyone. We had our elections this April, and I want to congratulate Jeannie Donahue as our new president, who is here today on the panel, and Miriam Vasquez as our new vice president. Jeannie has previously been secretary for our chapter, as well as the founding president for the Florida Sandhill Crane Preservation Society. Miriam is new to our board of directors, and we are happy to have her join the team. We are still in need of board members, so please reach out if you are interested. Stay up to date on chapter activities through Facebook and our website. Before we begin, I would like to mention a few housekeeping items. If you haven't seen any of our previous programs before, you could check them out on our YouTube channel. For today's program, log into YouTube and type any questions you have in the chat. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If we have any connection problems, be assured we will work on fixing it as soon as possible. Now, I'm happy to introduce tonight's guest, Stefan Ramsden. He will chronicle the activity of a family of barred owls that have nested at a private nature preserve that he manages near Atlanta. He is the founder and director of the world's highest volume hands-on solar astronomy sunlight and nature outreach program called the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project, Sunlit Earth. He retired from military and civil service in the U.S., Navy, and as an air traffic controller for the Federal Aviation Administration. He is also a noted motivational speaker around the world with appearances at several major astronomy and science conventions in the US and abroad. He has been published in countless periodicals and on internet sites and holds certifications as an Audubon Master Birder and in ecology and advanced STEM education. It is awesome to have you here tonight, Stephen.
Hey,
thank you for joining us.
I sound really important. Can you read that again? That was awesome.
And thank you for being here. And I will pass it over to you now.
Well, wonderful. I appreciate the invite. Larry, who's not with us, Stephanie and Jeannie, thank you for having me here. This is going to be more like, when you're out birding and you run into somebody and you mention a bird and they say, hey, let me show you some pictures, man, of this bird I got yesterday on my iPhone. And you're sitting out there in the woods. That's kind of more what this is going to be than a formal presentation because I'm the one giving it and that's what I want to do. So, yes, that's right. And we're going to talk about barred owls. They're just awesome. They're super mysterious. They're just wonderful creatures. And I've really gotten up close and personal with barred owls over the last few years as a rescue person for the local Chattahoochee Nature Center. And as a bird watcher and as the manager of a nature preserve, I've dealt with barred owls in ways that a lot of people don't get a chance to do. And also other owls, but barred owls are the most common to see. So we're going to talk about them a little bit. And I'll start my presentation in a moment. But I do appreciate Kissimmee Valley Audubon having me on. I've been birding in your region many times. And it's, I'm always surprised when somebody wants me to come on and give a lecture about something that's not math or physics, because I don't really know much more about it than anybody else, but I like to talk and maybe that's why. So during the lecture, you guys feel free to interrupt and make comments, say whatever you want, enjoy yourselves. I don't get very formal. So welcome YouTube people. I'm looking at you on the other screen here, so don't say any bad words. And now I'm going to share my screen and then you're going to give me a confirmation that I'm sharing it properly. If this works, I'm an all Mac person, so obviously I'm superior to everyone else.
Of course you are.
All right, here we go. So let's see. Are you seeing one? Are you seeing it correctly, Stephanie?
Not yet.
Okay.
I do not see it.
Just one moment. I think it's sharing the wrong screen again. Let me go over here and try it. This is going to make it really fun when I
And for anyone watching, if you ever used Zoom before, there's lots of these screens you have to choose. So it could be a little confusing of which proper screen to share.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. Let's see what that does.
Okay, I
Nope,
see.
that's not good. We'll get it. Don't worry. Just one moment. Play. I'm trying again. Sorry, it's taking us so long.
No worries.
I think I'm logged in 2 times.
All right, well, I'm trying my best here. What does this do?
Okay, I do see the image of the 2 owls.
Okay.
And now in presentation mode, where it's starting with the video.
Okay.
Awesome.
Let me see what we can- Sorry, everybody. We're working on it.
Problem.
Show slideshow. Show
Worth it.
slideshow.
They're beautiful.
Show slideshow.
So cute.
Okay, I'm stopping the share again. Start to share. I'm getting really. All right, where is it? I don't even see it now.
Ah,
Yeah, sorry guys.
No worries.
Nope, I don't want that. Isn't this awesome? Technology is wonderful.
No worries at all. We're a relaxed bunch here, so.
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
you can
No.
hear me, but you can't see me, correct?
Correct.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right, so I'm not exactly sure what to do here, except keep trying.
And let me just double check and make you a co-host. Maybe that will change something, Steve. Okay, I do see the
Yeah, I might
presentation.
just go through it this way because I can't get it to play. Anyway, let's just move on. It's not that important. I mean, it's just a picture. Everybody excuse the keynote program you're also seeing, but here we go. Barred owls. Barred owls are awesome. Their taxonomic name is Strix varia. They're the most common seen owl in the Southeast, probably in the country. They are fantastically awesome little creatures. They're totally helpless when they're born. They're very used to humans, and they are very, very easy to find and see, and especially hear, because they have that owl call that everybody plays on every movie for an owl. It's the who cooks for you call. Everybody recognizes a barred owl when they hear it, and most birders easily recognize them when they see them. So a little bit about me first, though. That's me, and that's all the stuff she read about me. And what I do is I retired from the Navy. I was in the nuclear power program, the Navy. Nuclear propulsion was my game, and I was always into physics and mathematics. I'm a big fan of calculus and complex math. I see it as the language of nature. And that's the way Isaac Newton intended it when he wrote Principia Mathematica. So when I go in nature, I'm just flooded with mathematical forms and equations and formulas and graphs and series and things mathematical when I look at shapes in nature. And the same shapes are everywhere, as everybody here knows. There's self-similarity among sizes. The distribution of the veins in the leaf are the same as the leaves on the tree and the trees in the woods. There's fractal equations everywhere when you look in nature. That's what I see. And I see the wavelengths of sunlight, which is my specialty, is observing the sun. And I wanted everybody to understand that that's where I'm coming from in all my lectures that I give and all my outreach programs that I do, is to try to get people to understand how awesome it is that every bit of color you've ever seen in your life, whether it's me, your clothes, the trees, a bluebird, an aircraft, the moon, planets, anything, all that color originates from the core of the sun. And the only reason you're seeing it is because it is being created in the core of the sun, and it's leaving the sun's atmosphere through the chromosphere, which you're looking at now in infrared light. And that light journeys through space to our planet 93 million miles away. It takes about 8.5 minutes to get here. And those photons of light are of different wavelengths. So every color there is originates in the sun's core, comes through our atmosphere, and is filtered out a little bit by the atmosphere. And it hits a boundary. And when it hits a boundary, either a wing of a bird, a leaf of a tree, the side of a car, water, it does one of four things: reflects, refracts, absorbs, or diffracts the light. And that goes into our eyes and every other animal's eyes, if they have them. And our eyes have evolved over, millions of years to be sensitive to these particular wavelengths with our rods and cones and our optic nerve. So the translation of these colors into useful information, like a beautiful bird or a lovely painting, to me is a triumph of evolution. And it's an amazing thing to think about and to understand how that light acts, the math behind it, the physics behind it, when it hits a boundary like a bird's wings or something, and then goes through all these processes in our eyes and our nerves and our brains, is a super, super fascinating subject. And what you're looking at here are actual images of the sun through telescopes that I set up all over the world and teach people about the sun. This purple image here is an ultraviolet image. The bright white areas in that last image were a solar flare. This is visible light of the sun. This is a close-up of the solar flare. This is the sun rising behind, actually setting behind a tree. That's a big sunspot. Our sun is the number one most important thing in the universe to our survival. And basically nobody knows much about it. If I go into the local Walmart and I ask 1,000 people, what's the sun made of? How does it work? I'm going to get 0 correct answers. And it's amazing to me that no one knows anything about this thing, which, is the essence of life and is where life comes from. And it's completely responsible for our continued existence. So that's why I teach this through my outreach programs. And a natural extension of this is birding, because this beautiful animal here, this is of course a barn owl. This is a Florida barn owl, by the way, filmed at Lake Apopka one time. This animal exists because of the sun. This animal's colors and variations of its appearance are sunlight. The animal doesn't emit light. And if you don't believe me, try to look at this animal in the dark and you won't see anything, because it has to have sunlight in order for you to see it. So every bit of this light journeyed from the core of the sun to hit this bird and then into our eyes. And it's just mind-boggling to think about. So that's what I see when I walk in the woods. This barn owl, by the way, just was chilling on Lake Apopka next to me. And I'm just, slowly driving down the road, getting honked at by people behind me because I wasn't going fast enough. And this bird just flies up next to me. He's not going much faster than I was going. And it's almost like he was waving at me. It was just the most incredible thing I ever saw. And he gave me enough time to get several photographs like this. And I love these owls. I love all owls, but we're going to talk about bards today. Barred owls have been around in their current shape for about 50 million years. Now let's think about that for a minute. We've been around in our current shape for maybe 500,000 years. All right. Barred owls and birds like the great blue heron or the yellow-crowned or black-crowned night herons that you see all the time in Florida, they have perfected their evolution for the purpose they exist for eating, crayfish and stuff in the water. They have been doing this for 50 million years. They've been doing this 100 times longer than we've existed as, Homo erectus. To me, that's another fascinating aspect that I think about all the time. Like, these birds have been doing, we think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we're cool and all that. But all these animals we're watching are way more evolved than we are, and they're way more perfected for what they're doing. And they're going to live a lot longer than we are too. This is the barred owl as it may have appeared 30 million years ago, with wild horses and et cetera in the background. I wish it had a pterodactyl back here, because that would be really cool. That's a bird I've been trying to get on my eBird list for a few years now, but I haven't seen a pterodactyl yet.
Still looking for one.
Yeah, I'm still looking. There are 2 families of owls, and it's funny because it's basically barn owls and then every other owl. That's the 2 different types of families for barn owls. There's over 200 species of the Strigidae, whatever way you want to pronounce it. And there's 17 species of barn owls. Of course, the one we see the most is down there in the lower center. It's called the barn owl, but there's several species of barn owls also. I keep hearing a noise in my kitchen. The barred owl that everybody's used to is up in this family of Strigidae, and it's, like I said, the Strixvaria. When I retired from the Federal Aviation Administration, I was an air traffic controller in Atlanta for 25 years. I love stress. It doesn't bother me a bit. Every job I've ever had has been super stressful, and I love it. But there was this place, I weighed about 410 pounds when I retired. And there was this place nearby that I used to go walking around in, because just to relieve stress from, aircraft collision type situations and stuff like that. And I would walk around this place, and I started noticing the animals around me all the time and the birds around me. It was really relaxing. And I know everybody's heard this story before, but I was forest bathing, as they call it in Europe, and walking these trails, and just started noticing the birds. And that's when I started recording the birds, and I kind of got caught up in it when I met a few friends out there that were birders. And before you know it, I'm down 150 pounds. Life is good. And the next thing I know, they kind of talked me into being on the board of directors out there and got me to do all the work. So now when I go out there, I have to pick up trash and do all the work. But it's lots of fun, and I've really become involved in this place. It's a 28-acre nature preserve in Decatur. Here's downtown Atlanta, and it's just east of it, about 6 miles east of downtown Atlanta. And this is an overview of the area. It's 28 acres total here. And right here is urban sprawl that's horrible, North DeKalb Mall. Over here is a subdivision on this side. Over here is a Quick Trip and a Subaru dealership. This place is right in the middle of a bunch of crap, that no animal should be living here and enjoying it. But somehow we've got 186 species of birds recorded here in the last 5 years. We've got coyote family that lives here. We have possums, raccoons, mink, deer, squirrels. Like I say, 186 species of bird. It's just amazing that so many animals live in this tiny little place. And this little slab of mud right here is the pond, and it's a vernal pond or an ephemeral pond, whichever way you like to refer to it. And that's a pond that's only full maybe half the year, and then it is dry for about half the year. And this allows us to have a very varied population of amphibians also, because amphibians require a vernal pond that does not have fish in it to lay their eggs and survive. So we have the largest population of spotted salamanders in North Georgia somehow in this urban sprawl. This is right in the middle of the city. It's like Central Park, it's just right in the middle of all this garbage. We have 5 other species of salamander. We have several snakes. The place is amazing. And my birding is a little bit different, because I walk these trails just about every day to pick up garbage. And I don't really go anywhere else to go birding anymore. I love this place so much, and I probably know it better than anybody alive right now, because I've cleaned up or built or repaired something on every square inch of this place. And when you do that, it's amazing the stuff you see, rather than going out and competing for some bird somewhere. That's cool, and that's what a lot of people like to do. But for me, I love to watch the subtle changes in this nature preserve throughout the different seasons. It's really I can't even think of the right word. It's very fulfilling to watch these different little patches of this preserve go through seasonal changes. I was out there last week, and for the second time I've seen this, but I'm sitting by a ginkgo tree, and I'm just sitting there minding my own business, looking at nature, being quiet. And all of a sudden, every leaf on that tree fell, and they all fell within about 2 minutes. The entire tree shed its leaves. And I understand that species does that. And this is the second time I've seen this tree do this. But I wouldn't have seen that if I'd been out competing for the next, piping plover or whatever in some county. That's not my thing. I like to go here and take care of this place and watch all the animals change yearly. So we've got a bunch of webcams and things. And I will be getting to barred owls in a moment, by the way. But we've got all kind of webcams and things in here. And I've just gotten a great, great deal of satisfaction from studying this nature preserve, and this nature preserve only, for the last 5 years. And I have been to a couple other places. My wife and I own a lot next to the Wildlife Drive at Harris Neck. We have a little house down there too. So we do go to other places, but I spend most of my time watching the Clyde Shepherd Nature Preserve. And that sounds great. And it is great. But when it's slow, it's slow. And when it's heavy there, we got birders from all over the place coming in to see, like the black-billed cuckoo that we get every year, or the American bittern that comes to our pond for some reason every year. But when there's no birds, unusual birds here, it's very quiet and you hardly ever see anybody. And I really like that too. This checklist is a little bit outdated, but 179 species. And it is amazing that we get even spotted sandpipers, black crown, yellow crown night herons. They even breed at this place, and that's nothing for you Florida folks. But for us in the middle of downtown Atlanta, it's pretty amazing that any bird comes here and breeds, but that we have this varied collection of wildlife. And I want to take a little credit for it, because me and the other 5 board members, we work really hard to keep this place up for birding. And that's how I met Larry, the former president of your group. And that's kind of how I got roped into this presentation. Maybe not roped in. That's how I volunteered for this presentation. How about that? So our
We're
barred
happy
owls.
to have you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Our barred owls, I know I talk a lot. So if you have one of those wrap it up boxes like Dave Chappelle on his comedy show, you just start hitting the wrap it up box number. Anyway, I've noticed these barred owls after I've watched them so carefully, at least in our state, and I'm hoping it's probably about the same where you guys are, that in late December or early January is when these barred owls start caterwauling all the time, and they're meeting up. Before that, you don't really see them very often. You'll hear them every day at sunset. And sometimes for some reason in the middle of the day around noon, I hear the barred owls call each other a couple of times. We've got several out in the nature preserve now. I know they're there because they don't travel far in their entire lives. They stay in basically the same place. But when they're not breeding, you hear them around noon. You'll hear them around an hour before sunset, and you'll hear the "Who Cooks for You" call a couple times, and that's it. But in December, things change, and you start hearing the caterwauling call, and that's the it sounds like a bunch of monkeys yelling at each other, and they're looking for their girlfriends, man, or they're looking for their boyfriends, and they're monogamous birds. If people didn't understand it, they stay with the same mate. Unfortunately, usually it doesn't last very long because one or the other will die or get killed, but they'll stay with the same bird. And I can recognize all these birds just by their eyebrow shapes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the caterwauling starts around Christmas. And by the middle of January, if they're both still alive, they've gotten together and they've chosen a nesting spot. May or may not be the same place they were last year. And they start laying the eggs. The female lays 3, maybe 4 eggs, really from 2 to 4 eggs. And they only do this once a year, and they don't necessarily do it every year. These eggs take about 33 days to hatch. And that goes on. The eggs are usually laid by middle of February, and they take about 33 days to hatch. And the mother sits on the eggs almost full time because it's still freezing. It's still really cold in Georgia. The male sits up in a tree and watches the mother. You'll see the male somewhere near the nest all the time, and he'll be in a position all day long where he can look down into, if it's a nest box, look into the nest box or into the cavity and see, be in line of sight with the female, and they stay there all day long. They go out and get something to eat maybe twice a day. The female never leaves the nest unless some idiot is messing with the nest or making some stupid noise or something. But they stay there and guard those eggs with their life for the whole 33 days. Then they hatch, and the female and the male take turns feeding. It's mostly the male, but the female does come out and stretch her wings and feed. And that starts happening around March or April. And then, when they fledge, the baby owls are real timid. They're beautiful. We've got some pictures of that coming up. But they'll fledge out of the box, and they'll sit on the edge of it for a couple of days, and they'll look around. They look real stupid, and they're like, oh, man, I don't know what to do. And finally, at usually the worst time possible, they'll just leap, take a leap of faith. There's no closer meaning to a leap of faith than that one, because they're jumping out of a nest box that might be 40 feet in the air. They have no idea what's below them. They have never stepped on any surface other than their nest box before, and they just jump. And it's spurred on by hunger because the parents will quit feeding them a little bit before that. And most of the time that's successful. They'll jump onto the ground somewhere and they'll walk around until they find a tree, and they instinctively stick their beak into a tree and their claws, and they start climbing that tree. And they instinctively do it until they get to a limb or something where they can sit safely. It's amazingly hardwired stuff. This is not learned behavior. It's genetically imprinted behavior on an animal, just like a bird building a nest is genetically imprinted. It's not learned, which is a whole nother fascinating subject. But that's basically how it works. And we'll go through the way that changed year to year at our nature preserve. And I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but I'm trying to be thorough. So in 2017, when I first started there, this is oriented north-south. This red circle indicates where the nest box for the owls were. And remember, I told you the father just sits up in the tree and looks in the box all day long. This is a picture of the dad of this particular pair that was there when I first started being on the board. And the dad looks like he's asleep, but if you watch him for a while, like I did, I watched him maybe 10 hours a day for like 3 or 4 weeks. My wife loved that. No, really, she loved it because I was not at home bothering her. But this owl, the slightest noise, the slightest movement out of the ordinary, and that bird is at attention with eyes open and ready. It's amazing. I could jingle my keys inside my pocket and the bird would open both eyes and look at me to see what was going on. But everybody thinks he's asleep. He ain't sleeping. He's guarding the nest. And you notice one talon is stuck up into the feathers to stay warm because it's still about 35 degrees here during the day at that time of year. So that's the dad. And that's the mother of this crew before she went into the box. And they look almost identical, but I've gotten to where gotten to where I can recognize these birds from their faces. The eyebrow right here on barred owls is generally different on every barred owl. And there's not much else you can do to recognize one from the other, unless there's an injury or a burn or something like that. But the eyebrows are about the best way to tell the different individuals apart. So in 2017, they got together. They did not have babies or did not lay eggs in the owl box that we wanted them to. So I'm not sure what happened to their family that year. In 2018, we had the same family at the same owl box here on the bottom right. And then we had another family that was over here, which is right on this creek that runs through Atlanta. And so we had 2 families of barred owls that year. And this is the same male that was in the other slide, going back to that same nest box. This is one of the 1-year-old from the previous year that was messing around there. And if you notice, he's trying to eat some kind of large, hard thing, like maybe a ball of some kind, a pool ball or something. I don't know what that is, but it's weird the kind of stuff they try to eat out here. This is that owl from 2018. It's hard for me to see the slides. Yeah, sitting on a bench waiting for something to happen. It's kind of the weird behavior they do. But we'll go to 2019. I know I'm going to rush through a couple of these years because nothing really happened. This is 2019. We're back to the main owl box. All right. So they've got some eggs in the box at this time. This is the male. You can see the eyebrow on the right is a little bit lower than the one on the left and a little bit thinner. But notice this is a crawdad that they're eating. This particular pair of birds is situated at a point where they're close to a pond that has 1 million crawdads. So that's what they eat. And a lot of people don't even know that owls can go into the water, dive into the water and get crawdads or even fish sometimes. But they are an opportunistic eater. So whatever's there, whatever they can catch, that's what they're going to eat and take back to the babies. So this is dad bringing back a crawdad into the box. And this is the old box that they used that year. So this is an in-flight shot of the dad doing this. And he would do this when after the eggs hatch, he would do this every half hour the entire day. If there's 3 baby owls in there, this guy is slaying some crawdads. I mean, and sometimes he would go and catch a cardinal. They seem to have an affinity for northern flickers. I'm not sure why. Maybe northern flickers are really slow or easy to catch, but they eat a lot of cardinals and they eat anything they can get. I've got a slide further down of him eating an ornamental goldfish from some guy's pond. And I've also seen the owl come in with a kitten, which I'm not going to show because people don't tend to like videos of kittens being destroyed. And this is the face of the male. Notice the eyebrow here. I want to get that across to you. The easiest way to identify individuals is by their face. And this feeding behavior goes on and on. And when they're not feeding, the male returns right back to his little stand up in the tree to watch the box. He's watching inside. He's watching mommy and the babies in the box. And if a predator comes up to that box, he is going to get down there, and it's either going to be his life or the predators. They do not give up. One thing about barred owls is they don't attack humans. They will not attack you if you're near the box. But if you go at a certain point and put your hand in the box, they're coming to get you. But a great horned owl, for instance, will attack you immediately, just like a dog or just like any other predator that goes close to the box. The great horned is much more vicious than the barred, but I have a couple of pictures of that coming up too. So here's mommy and daddy from the other nest box site that I was showing you back here up that was up at the creek. That's those two. And notice the face on these two. It's clearly not the same owl as this one. Okay. And when you see these three owls, I put this slide up here because it's so easy to see how different their faces can look. This owl has much bigger, I'm not going to go through all the differences, but it's easy to identify individuals in the owl world if you look. This is a picture. Let me turn this volume down a little bit. Are you hearing the volume on your end? Okay, good. This is the baby at about 2 weeks old, looking at the bugs and kind of like checking out the world, seeing what's up. And notice there's ants crawling around the entry hole. There's the inside of this box is a mess. It's full of skeletons and body parts from all the prey. They don't eat seeds and they don't eat anything that's pretty. They eat only living things, they're flesh containing things. So the entire bottom of the box gets a buildup of 4 to 5 inches of just skeletons, like a gigantic owl turd or owl, what's it called? The thing you pellet, an owl pellet. Yeah. So it's like a big fat 14-inch wide owl pellet in the bottom of that box, about 4 inches deep. So that's why it's important to clean out your owl box every year. Because if not, it would just be a gigantic, 40-pound owl pellet in a couple of years. So in 2020, we came back, and 2020 was a strange year because they did not come back in at all in either spot and breed there. And I don't know why, because they had 3 successful babies in 2019. And this is one of those mysteries, because, you'd think if it was successful there, everything would be great and they'd want to come back in the same spot. But I'm pretty sure one of the two were killed. Here's a stat nobody wants to hear. 1 in 5 raptors, owls included, 1 in 5 make it to their first birthday, especially in a city environment. So I'm pretty sure that one of these owls were killed. And they never came back in 2020, and we had no owl baby activity in 2020. This nature preserve is known locally as the place to go see barred owls breeding. So it was very unusual for us not to have any barred owls. But a half mile away at the next park, there were 2 juveniles, and this is the parent there. And notice this parent's eyebrows don't go all the way together. He doesn't have the unibrow at all. And there's no dark line in the middle. So it's really easy to identify these owls individually when you get to know them and you get to watch them. Here's the 2 baby owls. They're watching dad hunt. And this was at a park nearby. So it's just strange to me that they move around a little bit like that. 2021 came through. We had the same box back here with some birds in it. And we had a very, very special occurrence here. And his name was Ralph. And that's kind of what this lecture is about. Ralph was a gift to all of us. It was an inspiring thing to watch. I was so fortunate to have anything to do with this that, sometimes it'll bring a tear to my eye just thinking about Ralph. I saw Ralph today when I was out there cleaning up garbage. I don't know that he recognizes me. I like to think he does, but I saw him out there on a tree today, and Ralph was awesome. So they did not at the box in the back where they were the previous years. They did not go into that box and breed. And I'm thinking because the male was trying to look for a new girlfriend and it just didn't work out. This is the male with the lower eyebrow on this side of his face. And then there was a female there, or maybe a sibling or something, but I don't know what happened, but they never went into that box again. And this is that same male, you can tell by the face. But he did hang around and he did look in the box for the entire time as if there were a female in it, but nothing ever happened. So I think maybe, that lends the question is, was he just expecting the female to come, and was he just waiting there until he got, incapable of waiting any longer? And I would say, yeah, just instinctually waiting for his mate, but she never showed up. But in this tree on the other end of the preserve, I was walking through, and my friend Brian Keever called me and said, "Hey man, there's a bird in the top of this tree." And I go, "No, there's no birds down there. The owls are on the other side." So I went and walked over there, and sure enough, there had been some owls had been in this tree and had babies. This is a 6-week process, and I didn't even notice. And they're in this tree 30 feet high that broke off the year before from a windstorm. And the first time I even noticed this nest, it already had a 2-week-old hatchlings in it. So, everybody's spirits were lifted. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is awesome, man." And you could see this bird from the road, which was even better. It was very easy to spot. You could see mommy and everybody from the road. So everybody got happy again. And we had a family in this tree. Here's the promised photograph of a $1,500 ornamental goldfish being devoured by the mother. I don't know if these are movies or not. Okay. Yeah, she brought it back. The neighbor's pond is 3 doors up the street, and he was none too happy about it. But what can you do, man? The owl went through the netting. People put netting over their ponds to protect from snakes and owls and great blue herons. It doesn't really do much protecting, because if the bird sees something, it's going to go through the net. But it does a very efficient job at killing animals trying to get through the net. So there's really no point in using a net. And the end result is almost always king snake getting caught in the netting, which I have to go out and untie all the time, or something larger getting caught and dying. But that's the baby trying to eat the goldfish. And it was just funny to watch, because they couldn't swallow it. They didn't know what to do with it. They played with it for a week or so, and just, they just finally just threw it in the bottom of the nest, and it never got eaten. So these 2 babies were really healthy. Mom was feeding them. Everything was great. But let me go back to this slide for a minute. I told you my affiliation with the Chattahoochee Nature Center, where we go and get owls all the time. We had an owl in a city way north of Atlanta that had somehow become abandoned. It was on the ground. There was no nest anywhere nearby. Nobody was really sure. The finder didn't have the address or location where it was found. So it ended up with Chattahoochee Nature Center. And my friend Catherine Dudek, who is one of the greatest humans alive, got this bird and nursed it at the nature center. And she lives in the neighborhood with our nature preserve also. And she goes, "Hey, let's go put this bird in the nest with these other barred owl babies." And I'm like, I never heard of that before. Turns out barred owls are more than happy to accept orphan babies into their nest and take care of them as their own. And so here's Catherine actually putting the bird in the nest. I'm holding the ladder. She's got him in a grocery bag around her shoulder. And this is Ralph's first introduction to his new family. And watch what happens. "See ya, bro." The other sibling jumped out immediately. So here comes Ralph. You can see his wing hanging out of the bag. And this is all about 35 feet up in the air. And Catherine gets to do this for a living. It was a really, really great thing to watch. I was over there in the woods. I went and got the baby and brought it back, and she put the baby back in there. But that was Ralph's introduction, and Ralph became the 3rd baby in this group. And a funny thing happened. There's mommy feeding Ralph and the other 2 siblings. Ralph was this lower one here. He was a few days younger than these 2. But a funny thing happened with Ralph when we put it in. There was about 75 people out watching on the street. CNN was there. And they put Ralph in, and Ralph did not become visible for some time. And so we did see the other owls. After a few minutes, someone noticed that one of the other owls had a white tuft of fur in its beak and was trying to devour it. And so we all, even Catherine, assumed that Ralph had been eaten by the other birds. We figured that they killed it and were currently devouring it. People were actually crying. And it was just a real emotional experience to sit there with these owls. And I was very upset too. And then all of a sudden, Ralph just poked his head up and said, "Hey, what are you crying about?" Turns out they were eating a red-shouldered hawk baby that had been brought in by the mother a couple hours earlier. There was a red-shouldered hawk's nest above this owl nest. And these two birds don't get along all that well, and they'll eat each other. The owl runs the night. The owl will eat the owl will eat screech owls. He'll eat small hawks, crows, cardinals, anything it can get, and it rules the night. But during the day, the owl just gets harassed all day long by crows and hawks and everything else. So it was one of those. I'm glad Ralph's alive and made it, but I'm sad to see a tiny red-shouldered hawk being killed. But that's the way it is. So this is the mom coming back with half of probably a baby possum or a vole of some kind, feeding it to the animals. They were all very hungry and they ate a lot of good food because mommy fed them well. And here's all three of them at about 3 weeks. The face of these owls starts getting darker around the eye sockets about a week before they're ready to go. You'll notice a darkening of the back of the bird. And the face will start darkening around the eyes and all that. And the reason it's dark there and shaped that way is the darkness helps them see in the sunlight. It's like baseball players wearing the dark shadow around their eyes or under their eyes. And then the shape of the face is designed solely for sound waves to be better heard by the owl, so they can hear better with that flat face that angles back to their ears. So we'll keep going real quick. Here's a nighttime shot of night vision camera shot of them, mommy bringing back some food. This may or may not have been the kitten. I'm just not gonna say, but yeah, there they are. So I know I'm running over my time. Let me get moving. Okay, so there's a couple of them at 4 weeks. You can see they're taller and slender now. They're getting ready to jump. That's Ralph, who's still a little bit small, and he's kind of surveying life, getting ready to hit the road. This is the other one who's already jumped, and mommy's feeding it because they continue to feed these babies for 2 or 3 months after they jump out of the nest. They teach them how to hunt and they continue to feed them. So the care doesn't end at fledging. And this is mommy feeding sometimes a squirrel or something to the baby. And that's a close-up photo of it. These are gruesome photos, but this is the way nature works. And there's Daddy. Notice the low eyebrow here from the other nest. He kind of watched what was going on there with Ralph. But anyway, Ralph made it out fine, and Ralph still lives there. And Ralph comes and sees me quite often when I'm out there working, and he's easy to recognize because he never did grow very well. He's a good bit smaller than the other barred owls we have for some reason, but Ralph is super healthy. Ralph did jump out of the nest twice, and I had to go get him in the woods. And barred owls are really easy to pick up. You just walk towards them. And even grown owls, they're really easy. They're not violent. They don't go after you. They just kind of sit up with their wings open and they start going. They clap their beak together and they're just looking at you, trying to look scary. And all you got to do is walk up with your glove on and just put your hand around their legs, around the talons, and pick them up. They don't attack you. No owl does anything with its beak. They're not going to hurt you with their beak at all. The only thing dangerous on a hawk or an owl is the talons. So once you got your hand around the talons, they will not do anything to you. And they're very appreciative at some point of you putting them back in the tree because a baby owl will die if it doesn't get to a tree and get up somewhere because mom's not going to come down and take care of it on the ground. So 2022 was a really good year. And that was this past year. This is the remnants of owl's nest. Some of the wood fell off so you could see inside it. This is all owl pellet material. This is not dirt. This part down here is dirt, but this is all owl pellet above it. And these are the skeletons. That's a rib cage of something, or possibly teeth. Not exactly sure, but there was bones and all kind of stuff everywhere. And plants were growing out of it from the previous year's harvest. And this is 2022 inside the owl box and in the back of the preserve. And notice how thick the skeletons are and the debris in the bottom of the owl box. And this is why you need to clean it. I think there's something good in this video, but since we're running short on time, we're just going to go to the next one. This is a cool picture of the 2022 parents who did end up going back in here. So the guy found another girlfriend and they did go back in the box and have eggs. But it did not end too well, but we'll talk about that in a second. This is a bronze frog being brought back for dinner for one of the babies. This is the hindquarters of a squirrel being removed from the nest for some reason. Maybe they didn't want to eat it or something. But it's an all day, 24 hours a day process to feed 3 baby owls. And this is a webcam I had inside the owl box. And they kind of just sit there for a while until they get big enough to reach the hole. And then this is about a week-old barred owl. Notice the face is not nearly as dark. The feathers haven't filled in. There's no dark feathers. And it's just white. So there's 3 of them in here at this time. And this we broadcast this live on the internet for about 3 weeks. And we might have had 7 viewers. Nobody cares about watching this except bird nerds. But the bird nerds really did enjoy it. So let's move over to the next one. This is mom leaving the nest, or dad leaving the nest with the baby owl watching. See how big the beak is now. This is about 3 days later. And there's 2 of them. There's 3 in the box, but there's 2 of them hanging out. And I love the talons in this shot. It's like a whole ring of talons down there. And their faces are getting a little darker. They're getting a little bit more darkness around their heads. And this is about 3 weeks old. And here they are. There's all 3 of them finally. And notice the one in the back here, its head is a little bit smaller than the other 2. And it's always in the back. This is it right here. Just didn't develop as fast as the other 2. And here they are getting ready to jump. And I watched this for hours every day and broadcast on the internet until my laptop batteries wore out, which was about 4 or 5 hours worth. And everybody was just waiting. They'd come out and do this for about 2 days in a row and they never would jump. And then finally one of them jumped. That's that's mom enticing them out of the box with some food up on the branch. And one of them finally did jump out and then she continued to feed it. And the other one was still waiting to go. And then that's the second one that jumped out. And they go to the nearest tree and they climb it. And wherever they end up is where they end up. And mom feeds them there. And you can see it here. They don't know what they're doing yet. And they get tangled up and stuff and caught up in privet and everything. And, it's really a risky thing for this owl to jump out into something like this with no experience navigating any of it. Because the parents don't come get them if they get tangled up in something. The parents just watch and wait. They don't rescue them from situations. So that's the parent still going to box feeding one of them with crawdads. This is that same bird we just saw in this video getting tangled into this mess of privet branches and overgrown undergrowth. This bird did not die. This bird got its way out of here, but I'm showing you this slide because the 3rd bird that jumped did die. This bird found its way out and climbed up a tree and survived. And that's what they do. They climb these trees with their beaks and their bills. So let me go back to this and tell you that the 3rd bird up here that jumped, this smaller one, it's this one here, the smallest one, jumped out in the middle of a thunderstorm at about 2 a.m. And he jumped right into a massive privet and horrible tangled mess of privet. And of course, nobody was there. Nobody knew. I reviewed the cameras the next day and it got one talon caught in the privet stem and couldn't get out and it died. It died during a thunderstorm. So I got there in the morning and there was a dead owl baby hanging on the tree and it was just a horrible sight. So, keep that privet trimmed down, man. Just be careful because these little dudes depend on us to keep things cleared up for them. But anyway, we had a second family in preserve, and that's mommy and the 2 babies. And there's a very typical behavior for a baby owl. If it falls out of the nest too soon, this owl is only about a week old. It's way too early to be out of the nest. They will climb up on something and just sleep and wait for help. And the mommy will come down and feed them, but the mommy will not pick it up or anything. They just leave it there. And this bird jumped out and was needing help. So I went out and got it and put it into a wicker basket that I tied to a tree, and it lived in a wicker basket until it could get up on its own. And it did survive. That's mom bringing it a squirrel or something. And let's see. Okay. So moral of the story is these birds are survivors. 1 in 5 will make it to its first birthday. And if you have these owls in your vicinity right now, October is the time to put up your owl box if you want to have them go into an owl box. And you can buy owl boxes at Birds Unlimited or whatever. They usually make them out of cedar, but it just needs to have a 5-inch hole, diameter hole, and be about 14 by 12 on the bottom and about 30 inches high. But you can buy an owl box. But if you want to put one up and get owls in it, you have to have it up by the end of October, because they start breeding in December and the smell has to get off of the box. And I put up 3 boxes at the nature preserve. One of them was used, the other 2 were not. So there's no telling which one they're going to pick. But if you wait until December or January, there's no chance of them going into this year. They might do it in next year. And they'll also nest in any kind of cavities that you have in trees or even broken off tree tops. So right now, about an hour before sunset is when you start hearing them getting together. And if you hear caterwauling in your area or multiple owls calling each other at night, that means you have a breeding pair in your area and they are waiting to meet up and go into a cavity. And the best way to find an owl in the daytime, if you don't know where exactly they are, is listen for a pack of crows trying to kill something. The crows will mob the owl all day long. And if you hear a bunch of crows losing their mind in a treetop, it's either an owl or a hawk. And this time of year, it's probably going to be an owl, because the owls are out in the open waiting for their spouses to show up. So that's what I know about these owls. And our Facebook page is called Sunlit Earth, which is my local affiliate that just talks about wildlife and how it uses sunlight and wavelengths of light. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, Sunlit Earth. And we love amateur photos, anybody's impression of the sun and what it means to them. Sunsets, Florida is one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's got some of the best sunsets you've ever seen. And we love photos of that. Anybody that wants to come and join our group, we do not get into the competitive birding or the my camera's better than your camera crowd. That's nothing. We don't do any of that. We love everybody to get on here and talk about sunlight. So that's our Facebook page. And we are doing our fall fundraiser right now. So here's my shameless plug for my nonprofit. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll see all this stuff on there. But we are a legitimate nonprofit. This is not any Kickstarter or GoFundMe nonsense. This is a real nonprofit. We're certified. We've been around for 12 years. So if you'd like to get involved more with us, we'd love to have you. Sunlit Earth would be the page you'd be interested in as bird watchers. And again, I know I went on a little bit long, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. And I can guarantee you I will be down there sometime this winter at Joe something Boulevard. What's it called?
Joe Overstreet.
That's exactly right. Because one of my favorite things about Florida is the American bittern and the caracara. And I want to find, we don't have caracaras up here. So I love going down to Florida in the wintertime, January, February, and going to Kissimmee area and going over Lake Apopka and all that stuff. So if you see a big fat guy with and that looks like me, it'll probably be me. So come say hello. And thank you for the time, and I appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for an awesome presentation. I didn't know so much about barred owls, but I think they're adorable. And there are a few comments in the chat that I would like to mention to you. Robert Sky, he asks, how often are the babies not able to climb back up to their nest?
Never. Unless they're injured or attempted to be eaten on the ground. They I'm assuming he's talking about after they fledge. They don't go back to the nest, actually. They just find a tree, any tree, and they climb that tree. And they climb until they get to a limb that they can go out on and sit. And it's instinctual behavior. It's fascinating to watch. It's a struggle. It's very emotional to watch. And that's a great question. They don't actually go back to the nest. They just find a tree and they sit in this tree. And the parents are watching them the whole time. But it was always odd to me that the parents never, in any circumstance, will provide any assistance to get the bird out of a jam. And I guess that's one of the ways they weed out the weaker ones so the stronger survive. But once the baby has clawed its way up, and I mean clawed with the beak and the talons, and gets to a limb, the mother or the father will come and bring them food for several weeks because they don't know how to fly for another 10 days or so. I mean, they'll finally jump off that limb and flutter around, and they usually run into something or whatever. But that first month out of the box is really a dangerous time for these animals. So good question. Thank you.
Wow. And if that does happen and the parents keep bringing food, could they survive until they fledge, or because of the
Yeah,
elements?
If one falls out of the nest early, yeah, the parents, if it can get to a limb somewhere high above the ground, the parent, and I put that bird on that limb after it was on the ground, and the parents will go and feed it. But of course, the closer they are to the ground, the more easily eaten they are by coyotes or any other, meat, flesh-eating animal that comes through. And in our particular preserve and in any nature preserve setting, humans are a big danger to them also, because people think they need to go rescue the owl when it fledges out of the box because they're not used to seeing owls on the ground. But it's very normal for an owl to stay on the ground for a day and a half after it fledges. And if you go try to rescue it, more than likely, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to end up hurting the owl and it won't make it. But good question.
Now I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
And this is kind of going back to the beginning of the presentation, but I really like your approach, how you just hang out a lot in the preserve and you're not into the competitive birding.
No,
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I do a lot of birding in my yard, and I live in the city area in like a residential suburban area, but I see so many birds that come to my yard, and I love watching the changing seasons and who comes and what. And so I just had to put it out there. Maybe you have, hopefully you have. If not, I recommend it to everyone to read the book Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. And he's like one of those early nature naturalists. And he wrote a lot about birds and what you see in the changing seasons. And it's very poetic.
It really is fascinating. And it's a great way to spend time. And I'll add, not to interrupt, but I'll add that some birding spots are much better birded by picking one spot and sitting for an hour than they are by walking. And Clyde Shepherd Nature Preserve is one of those spots because you will see a lot more. We have these flocks of multi-species birds that fly back and forth across the preserve all day long. And they do this all day. And if you're walking, you may miss all of it the whole day. If you sit in one spot, you will see pretty much every bird in there will fly by you.
Yes.
Yes, I much prefer that. And I don't have any problem with people that do the competitive birding. That's their thing. But to me, it just takes the fun out of it. So I choose this way, but we welcome all types of birders at our nature preserve. And we certainly have had a lot of records set and competitive birders come through there. If I put something on eBird about the bittern, within an hour, there'll be 50 people show up to see the bittern.
Nice.
And then they'll run to the spot. We had a Wilson's warbler last year for the first time in DeKalb County. And we saw it, it was easy to see. And there was 20 people that showed up within a half an hour of me putting it on the DeKalb birders list. And they ran to the spot to look at it, and then they just left and went. And it was like, man, you guys, there's baby owls right here. This entire preserve is beautiful. And to me, I just don't understand that, but I certainly respect their right to do it.
Excellent. I have another question. Do you see any predators going to the nests when they're born? Are there hawks that try to come, or other owls that try to predate on the baby owls?
Yes, to all. A lot of people don't know this, but the great horned owl is the #1 predator of barred owls. We had one great horned owl attack the box 3 years ago, and I watched it happen. The mother fought it off, and no one ended up dying. But squirrels, I don't know that they're predators, but a lot of animals will just happen upon the box and investigate it. Like titmice, for some reason, love to go up to that owl box and look in there. And, it's like a steak walking up to you and asking you to eat it. But yes, snakes routinely go to see if they can get something out of the box. It's more prevalent with the wood duck boxes because they're lower to the ground. Raccoons and possums and things will go up and investigate those boxes. But yeah, there's all kind of predators involved in these owl boxes and cavities. And red-shouldered hawks, like I say, they will come down and swoop the the owl baby right out of the nest. You want me to block the camera for a minute? Here she goes. Hold on. My wife's a lawyer, bless her little heart. She just works 16 hours a day. And I'm the housewife now, and I love that role. So yes, there's a lot of predators.
All right. Next question.
There's a lot of questions. I appreciate it. What a great crowd.
How territorial are they? So I saw in the pictures you have a nest box here or there, but do they pretty much stay in their territory?
Yeah, it's said that barred owls don't go more than a mile from where they were born their entire lives. And that each family just might go out a quarter mile, a third of a mile from where they were born. And that's how they spread. And that's why they're so dense through North America. And they're really surviving species. They don't venture far at all. They don't migrate. I have never seen a territorial dispute between barred owls. And we have 3 separate families, distinct families at our nature preserve. And I've seen them all together. And I've even seen the adults feeding the babies from the other families just because they happen to be sitting with their babies. So I'm not an ornithologist, and I don't have any super fancy credentials except experience in the woods to tell you. But I would say there's no territorial nature to these owls, and that they pretty much share what they got. It's unusual to have that many families within. It's a very small nature preserve. I'm told that a half-mile radius circle is about right for one barred owl family, but we have 3 of them in that same space in our facility, probably because there's nowhere else for them to go.
Yeah, exactly. A couple things in the chat. There's a hello, Stefan from Rosalind and Larry, so they must be watching, so they say hello.
Hello, Rosalind and Larry. That's who I went birding with. That's Larry. That's Larry. And
yes.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
we had a really slow day at Clyde Shepherd, but I as you can imagine, talked them to death about the preserve. So they felt good about it.
Awesome.
You can call me Steven.
Steven.
Yeah.
More questions. Is it good to put up barred owl boxes in all kinds of places, or should one study the area for certain factors? So is one type of area better than another?
Well, in the woods, it would be the place to have it. I would not put it up in an urban setting. But yeah, once you're in the woods, then they need to face south for some reason. And it needs to be at least 25 feet. So 25 to 30 feet is the optimum height. And I know these from experience. And facing it south is the best. And the hole size has to be right. And you can get the schematics for one on the internet if you want to build one. There's nothing to building any of these bird boxes. It ain't going to look pretty if you're not experienced, but it'll form. The bird doesn't care what it looks like. So they prefer trees that are maybe 1 tree in from a big opening. All right. They want to have a flyway to get into the box that's unobstructed by, they don't want to have to turn to get to the box because they don't want to spend a lot of time showing all the predators where the box is. They want to get in and get out without any hassle. So if you put it on the very edge of the clearing, they haven't been successful. But 1 tree in where there's a couple of trees in front of it, but not blocking it, seems to be the ideal place. They don't like it dense in the woods, but they do like it right on the edge of a clearing, but not the very edge. And these animals hunt by sight and sound, and they want to be able to see or hear the critters on the ground. So ground clutter would not be all that great. A heavily cluttered area with weeds and all would not be as good as an area that's just got sparse bushes and things.
Excellent. Another question. When exactly do you clean the boxes out? So what time of year do you generally do that?
Well, December to April is no, at least in Georgia, because you don't want to disturb the animals in any way. And other than that, from May all the way through October, it's whenever you get up enough courage to get up on a ladder 30 feet high and to clean out owl crap, I mean, it's a weird thing to do. And I'm 57 years old, and that's not something I look forward to doing. But yeah, sometime between May and October, it's very dangerous to be that high on a ladder, even when you're 25 years old. So, be careful, man, because a lot of these trees aren't big enough to support both rungs of the ladder. So you end up doing this, it slides like this, and it's really way better to strap yourself into the tree and climb, each rung and then keep strapping. But if you're used to climbing up to a deer stand, you're one of those hunting types, you won't have any trouble doing this. But sometime,
Mm.
and when you clean it, clean all of it out. Barred owls, no species of owl builds a nest in any way. They don't want anything in the bottom. You can put some cedar shavings in it if it makes you feel better, but they don't want anything in there. They don't care what's in the bottom of the box. They don't build a nest. Okay.
Okay.
So don't leave, don't feel like you need to put pine straw or anything in there, because that attracts the squirrels more. Because pretty much every year during the off season, there'll be at least one squirrel that nests in the box, and the owl will get rid of the squirrel post haste when it comes back. So the squirrels sometimes will build these big elaborate, pine straw nests in the box. And you don't want that in there, because if the owl can't fit in there comfortably and get below the level of the hole, it's not going to go in there to do anything.
Another question, could a box be winched up?
Yes, it can. Yes, but somebody's got to get that rope over that branch, and somebody's got to be up there to receive it when you winch it up. So yeah, I've tried every possible way to get up and clean these out. I just put 2 new ones up this past summer, and I got my friend who runs a tree business to come out and do it for me. I'm a strong guy. I don't, I'm not a weakling, and I'm not scared of anything, but it's just a dumb idea to get up on there trying to carry a 40-pound owl box up a ladder 30 feet and then screw it in. That's a dumb idea, man, if you don't know what you're doing. So just, it's worth the money to pay somebody to come out and put it up for you. And if you put it up too low, they're not going to go in it. It's got to be 25 feet.
Okay. Another question, being a scope expert, what's your favorite binoculars?
I am not a scope expert. I am a solar astronomer. Yeah, but I'll answer the question. My favorite binoculars are the ones I use the most that I'm not scared of using. And that's a pair of Nikon anti-vibration binoculars that I bought from a guy who helped me out when I first started birding. And he passed away, and it's my favorite pair of binoculars. So, but I'm not a good source for information on that. Solar astronomy is a lot different than nighttime astronomy. And the technology involved is the filtration of the wavelengths. It's more of an interferometer and a spectroscopic topic than it is for nighttime telescopes. So I would not be a good source for that. Like anything else, the more you spend, the better binocular you're going to get. So just quit goofing off and go buy some Swarovskis, and you only live once, brother. Oh, I'm just going to get this cheap pair to try it out, see if I like it. They always end up buying the better ones. They buy 3 or 4 as they go up to the Swarovskis. They end up spending twice as much money. Just go buy some damn Swarovskis right off the bat. And if you don't like them, you can sell them for the same amount you paid for them.
True. All right. A few more questions, if you don't mind. So what time are they most active? So most people have the perception that owls are only active at night, but all your pictures there during the day.
And I had that perception too.
Yeah.
Before I started watching.
What is the best times to view them, and is it all day, or give me some info on that?
Yeah. Outside of breeding time, you probably are not going to see them at all. And that's it. That's how they stay alive. These birds stay alive by not being seen by us. We being the most invasive species in the woods and the most deadly predator of all these animals, they don't want to be around us. So when it gets breeding time, instinct takes over and they are out. They're always somewhere, they don't just disappear. They're always somewhere. Barred owls love to hang out in pine trees, and they're usually 2 feet from the trunk. I've noticed in my sightings, I keep a record of every sighting. It's almost always 2/3 of the way up a pine tree, and it's almost always about 1 foot to 2 feet from the trunk on a limb. And they're there during the other months also. But you just don't see them because they don't move much. And when they go out hunting at night, you also don't see them because there's no sun to see them with. You hear them at night. But if you want to see an owl, a barred owl, you're pretty much wasting your time anytime other than when they're involved in the courtship or the raising of children. And during that time, you can see them any time of the day. People always ask me that, when's the best time to come out and see the owls feeding the babies? There is no best time. They do it all day long. So what you need is patience. Because what people mean when they ask you that is, when can I come out here and spend 3 minutes and get a perfect shot of the baby and the owl together and then leave? Never. You have to spend some time out there in the woods. You have to spend an hour watching them.
Mhm. Awesome. A few more questions. When Catherine was adding Ralph to the nest, were the parents around watching?
Yes.
Did they do anything?
No, they were directly overhead watching us the whole time. And when I went and got the baby that jumped out and brought it back over, the mother went and flew down and landed on a branch 10 feet above me and watched the whole time. And that's a unique thing about barred owls, according to Catherine, who's got 30 years experience rescuing animals and doing this. The barred owls just don't attack you for some reason. The great horned owls will come down and try to kill you as much as they possibly can. They'll rip your face off, with the talons. They'll tear your scalp out. She wears a helmet, motorcycle helmet, when it's concerning a great horned owl. But with the barred owl, for some reason, they're just very gentle. They don't hurt you. Very
Awesome.
surprising, because they will put a hurting on a squirrel. Let me tell you.
Yes. Wow. All right. I have another question. As a solar astronomer, do
Yep.
you watch for repercussions of the sun's energy on our Earth's magnetosphere and resulting seismic events? And do solar storms and or flares affect the owl's behaviors?
Yes and no. That was a big leap there from that first part of that sentence was totally sane, and I agreed with all of it. And yes, I watch the sun's energy impact our magnetosphere constantly. That's my hobby, and that's what I do. But then it jumped right over to seismic activity. There's no proven link between solar activity and seismic activity. Okay, it may be the case, but there is no data that has been peer reviewed that would link those two together. The sun is an ever pretty stable body, and it has these fluctuations every 11 years where the magnetic cycle goes into solar maximum. You get more solar flares, more sunspots, but these are really minor changes in the energy output of the sun. And those things are so far away from the Earth that they really don't have any immediate impact on anything here, except they can produce aurora in the atmosphere and stuff like that. But as far as energy hitting the surface of the Earth, there's pretty much no difference. And the most violent solar storm ever recorded, the Harrington event in 1868, had zero effect on any biological system on the surface of the Earth. So you got to think in long term with solar output and with the sun. It is a fascinating field, and when you show somebody a solar flare going off on the sun, they usually don't believe it. That they just look in the telescope and it doesn't compute, man. It's like seeing a UFO or something. It's just so far out of people's experience that they just don't want to understand it. But it is a fascinating field, and every single thing you've ever looked at or ever appreciated or ever admired in the woods was brought to you by the sun, was brought to you by nuclear synthesis and electrons leaving hydrogen atoms in the sun. And I know it sounds all nerdy and sciencey, but it's really a fascinating topic. And there's so many things that are so beautiful about the journey of that energy from the core of the sun to the back of your optical nerve. It's just it's a never-ending fascination for me. And I'll shut up now. But that's my thing. And what was the second part of that question?
Oh, it is, do solar storms and or flares affect owl behaviors? And I'll add on to that, any other birds that you've observed?
Yeah, and someone just typed the Carrington event allegedly fried telegraph wires stuff. Yeah, I was talking, if you listen to the response, biological systems on the planet were not affected by the Carrington event. Of course, a large sunstorm could, a solar storm could, but the effect would be the removal of the Earth's atmosphere once the storm got strong enough, because the magnetic charge at the front of the CME, the coronal mass ejection, would be enough to repel the Earth's atmosphere completely off the planet. And at that point, every living thing would be dead. But it wouldn't be because of the exposure to the solar energy. It would be because of the lack of an atmosphere. There is enough radiation in a solar storm to end all life on Earth. But the immediate thing that's going to kill us would be the removal of our atmosphere. It's like when you're on a submarine in the Navy, like I was. People are always worried about drowning. Oh, I can't swim. It doesn't matter, because if there's a hole in the sub and it loses pressure, you're going to be vaporized by the massive increase of pressure you will be vaporized before any water ever hits you. So you don't have to know how to swim to be on a submarine.
Mm.
That's kind of a tangent there, isn't it?
But still interesting. And I did want to say, if anyone wanted to come to the preserve, I can add it to our info on this page. I could put a website people could click in case they want to visit your preserve, and even your own website. I could add those links.
Yeah, just put Sunlit Earth, for the Facebook group, Sunlit Earth. All of we have a Facebook page for Clyde Shepherd Nature Preserve, but pretty much the focal point for everything we do for that and my nonprofit is the Sunlit Earth Facebook group on Facebook. And we'd love to have everybody come out to the preserve. We strictly enforce the leash dog law there. So don't bring your off-leash dog with you. But we have made this place into a really easy to get to and a really easy 1 mile hike through some extra great birding habitats and salamanders, if you like salamanders. So we really, really, really work hard to make this a really pleasurable and quick and easy hike through some good bird habitat. So we'd love to have you come up there. It's 6 miles east of the downtown Atlanta, and it's about 10 miles north of the airport. So Larry knows where it is. He's been there. And awesome. I would suggest coming between Christmas and May, the 1st to the 5th month of the year, because that's when the pond is full and that's when all the wading birds and the birds are there. So
awesome.
We'd love to have you. It's a privately owned nature preserve too. It's not publicly owned. So we get to throw people out whenever we want to.
Okay.
So people that do stupid things and do things that you don't want to be around when you're birding, we don't let them in there. So.
Awesome. That's great. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I learned a lot more about barred owls. I think they're adorable. You have great shots and videos, and it's just really heartening to hear someone else that is doing something for nature and you're taking care of it. And I like your whole birding philosophy.
Well, thank you.
So thank you so much. And
I hope to see you at the preserve, or when I come down there, I'm going to look you up and you're going to take me where the hot spots are.
Awesome.
Thank you also, Stefan. Much
thank you, Miss Jeannie.
And our owls, barred owls in the tree, started caterwauling when you began your presentation.
Yay! Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
You heard them outside caterwauling. Huh?
Oh yeah, I tried to put my microphone out there so that you could hear her, but
yeah, that's great news, man. I love to hear that.
Right when you started. Thank you.
It's my favorite time of year when the owls come in and you get to listen to them in the crisp, cold air in the wintertime, and you're just out there by yourself and you just get to hear them talking to each other. It's an amazing experience, man. I highly recommend it.
Do you talk to yours?
No, I don't have a very good owl call. I sound more like a sick moose, but I bird with a woman who is a meteorologist on CNN International. Her name's Karen McGinnis, and she's a weather person, a trained meteorologist. She's blonde and beautiful, all the weather girl things you'd ever seen. And she can blurt out an owl call like you have never heard, man. She can caterwaul and talk to these owls, and she sounds more like the owls than the owls do. And she can bring them over, and they will caterwaul back and forth with this woman. And it's just funny to see this beautiful meteorologist from television just out in the woods with her. And we love to get Karen McGinnis out there and have her caterwauling. So she's going to kill me for saying that, but she gives the best owl call I've ever heard.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Have a good night, and we look forward to seeing you next month for our November program. So be safe out there and have a good evening, everyone.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've